Hi, my name is Cynthia Croom. I'm the Executive Director of the Metropolitan Action Commission here in Nashville, Tennessee. And I want to be the first person to welcome you to MACTV. Now, what is MACTV? MACTV is Metropolitan Action Commission TV, and it's our opportunity to introduce ourselves to you, first of all, as an organization, but then also to introduce the public to information about what is happening in our city as it relates to individuals who live in poverty or individuals with low incomes. So over the next several weeks, you'll have an opportunity to learn more about the work of the Metropolitan Action Commission, but equally as important, you'll have an opportunity to learn about our partners in the city, both government partners as well as some of our nonprofits. So it's my pleasure to welcome you to our first show. The expectation is that for many of our shows, I will be your host, except today, because it's our first show, we have something a little different, and so I'd like to introduce our Public Information Officer, Miss Lisa McCrady.
Hello. Wow, we're finally here, MACTV.
Finally here, MACTV.
I'm very excited. Glad to be here with you today, and just wanted to talk casually about who you are as an agency director. Metropolitan Action Commission since 1964, addressing poverty, the war on poverty in the nation, and so this is one of the organizations that came from that. And so tell us who you are as a leader.
Well, let me begin first by saying that, well, I mentioned my name earlier. I am Cynthia Croom, but one of the things that's really nice about the opportunity to be here and to be the Executive Director of Metropolitan Action Commission is because I had the opportunity to benefit from the war on poverty as one of the children who was in Head Start. So when Head Start started, it was initially a program that was during the summer months, and I had the opportunity to attend Head Start in rural Alabama, so I did not attend the local program. And so to have an opportunity to be a child that was a part of the Head Start program, and then now the privilege of being able to lead an organization like Metropolitan Action Commission, I guess I have a chance to say that my history began with this type of work, but as a recipient, and that now I get the opportunity to help lead an effort in our city to make a difference in the lives of people who are affected by poverty in similar ways that I was affected as a child.
Okay. Now, word on the street.
Wow, there's actually
word on the street.
Okay.
There's a very memorable part of Head Start. You mentioned that you were a Head Start graduate, but there was something really special about Head Start that you just have carried throughout your life. And has kind of become a trademark in the city of Nashville. What might that be, Dr. Croom?
Well, I guess what you're referring to is that oftentimes the memories of things that you experience are not what people might think they would be, but for me, one of my favorite things as a child in Head Start were the cookies. And so we enjoyed having Head Start cookies. I don't know how they made them or what made them seem so wonderful to me, but to your point, one of the things that we also do here is we make sure that we share cookies with our partners and with our families because it just sort of left something wonderful in my life. That's, of course, not all I gained from Head Start, and as we talk a little bit more about the work of the agency, we'll certainly learn that we do more than make cookies.
Absolutely.
Because in today's environment where everybody's concerned about health, we know that an occasional cookie is okay.
Occasional. Well, let's just jump into it. Metropolitan Action Commission, the community action agency for Nashville and Davidson County, doing a lot of wonderful things for families in poverty, strictly for families in poverty, and trying to empower them. Tell us a little bit about the organization and some of the programs and services that Metropolitan Action Commission provides.
Well, we've been in existence, as you mentioned, since 1964. So, of course, at that time, I was not the executive director. I was a little bit younger, quite a few years younger. But the focus was on really an emphasis on helping people to break the cycle of poverty in their lives. And I think that over the years, we hear lots of things about whether or not the war on poverty was won or lost. For us, we view the war on poverty really from the perspective of the impact that it had on the individual child, such as in my case, an individual, a person who might be coming in for assistance, but also how we impact a family. So when we address the war on poverty, we look at the overall numbers within a city as to whether your poverty numbers have come down, but we also look very, very specifically at whether or not you have affected change in the life of the family that came into contact with you. So while the overall poverty number is certainly very important, it's equally as important for us to know when a family came into our Head Start program, when an adult came through our adult education program, did their life change? Were the barriers to poverty eliminated for them, or were they actually able to come out of poverty as a result of some of the work we were able to either do directly or through our partners? Right. So we do a number of things within the Metropolitan Action Commission, and you'll hear the ones that people tend to be more familiar with. You'll hear about our energy assistance program. You'll hear people talk about the fact that we assist with rent and mortgage. You'll hear about the summer air conditioning program. You might even hear about the summer food program, where we provide meals for over 4,000 children in the summer. What most people don't realize is that the real design of Metropolitan Action Commission and community action as a whole is that those types of initiatives are designed to be sort of one-time, let's help you this year, but they're not intended to be continual helping the same individual over and over year after year. The real focus of community action is the programs that are designed to help people out of poverty. So you have the energy assistance program, which is to help a family in an emergency. It's a safety net. That's what it's designed to do. And for the assistance that we provide for rent and mortgage, again, that's only one time per year. It's again designed to be a quick help because you're in a situation, maybe you had an unexpected bill, your car broke down, or something that you weren't able to pay because you didn't have a lot of savings. We can assist you that one time. But the real energy around community action agencies and organizations like ours is the work we do that's considered two-generational or multi-generational work that's designed to help people come out of poverty. I don't know that many people realize that. So for example, the work that we do with Head Start is designed both to help the children and early Head Start, because we start with pregnant moms now and we serve children through age 5. The work of that program says we work with your child to help them through Head Start services, through looking at their nutrition, through doing screenings of them with visual screenings and hearing screenings to address the barriers to their learning. But at the same time, we're working with that parent to say, let's set some goals with that parent. Is the parent unemployed? Then what are the barriers that might be keeping them from becoming employed? And so we might do a variety of activities with a parent, such as helping them get their GED, paying the cost for them to pay for their books to attend a technical program or to attend a 2-year college or even a 4-year college. We might cover the cost of that Head Start parent who may have gone to school, but not in this country, but they need their transcripts an equivalency done so that they can get employment. One of the things that we did with our partners here is we helped parents who had something on their record that was inhibiting their ability to get jobs. So we were able to work with our folks here around getting things expunged from their record so that they were employable. So a lot of the work we do that I don't think people are as familiar with is the work we do around addressing the issue of poverty through multi-generational approaches to help one child, one individual or person, and one family get out of poverty at a time. Absolutely. And so even though we serve through this organization over 15,000 households, the focus of our work is really around how we help address the issues related to poverty and the barriers that are created for people who are living in poverty.
Okay. wonderful example. I'm going to take you back to you just finished your doctoral degree. And outside of that being just a wonderful thing and just a great experience for you, I believe that you encountered one of our former Head Start parents that actually was in the doctoral program either with you or soon after. Talk to us a little bit about your encounter with her and what that was all about.
Well, it's interesting. We were in a doctoral program together, and during the course of being in the program, I'm a former Head Start child. She is a former Head Start parent, and what we discovered is that her child had actually attended Head Start here. Wow. At the Metropolitan Action Commission, specifically our Tom Joy location. And what she shared with us is that it was the experience of going through the Head Start program with her child and the team that worked there that encouraged her not just to make sure that her child had an opportunity to advance, but also what was she doing to advance her own situation. So she went from being a parent in the Head Start program without a degree to now graduating as a parent with her doctoral degree and is doing some great work, and we think is an example of the model that Head Start is designed for, which is, again, it's a multi or two-generational approach that allows you not just to address what's going on with the child, but also to help the parent or members of the family even deal with those issues that are barriers to them being able to come out of poverty.
Absolutely. So then you mentioned helping one family, one child, one person at a time. That's something new for Metropolitan Action Commission.
Well, I think what is, it's new and not new, and so I'd like to explain that. When you look at the history of community action, and I know that as a part of our first program, our hope is that we'll be able to show some footage from what happened, how community action got started. And community action was not originally intended to be administered by government entities. So this is a switch that community action is actually administered by a government entity. But the goal of community action was always to help individuals out of poverty. It was around advocacy. It was federal dollars that were placed in the community and given to community organizations, in many cases who were dealing with issues against government, in order to better the lives of people within that community who were in poverty. And so that has always been there. But over time, what happened is there started to be more of an emphasis on emergency assistance for many community action agencies, because that is the larger number of people that we serve. And so people started to sort of confuse or not put as much emphasis on the real push, which was around how do you help individuals address the barriers to poverty and break the cycle of poverty. So it's not that it's new for us, it's that we made the decision several years ago, both locally and with some of the work that's being done nationally, that we needed to refocus our efforts around things such as workforce, things related to really helping families break the cycle of poverty. So it's almost like we returned home, not that we built a new home in that sense. So we went back to really the reason why we were established. And so for our organization, we just spent, as you know, the last 3 years really focusing on some internal shifts that gets us back to the heart of who community action is.
Well, we'll stop now and take a look at that video.
In 1964, 30 million Americans lived in poverty. Although most of the poor were white, the power of the civil rights movement raised the issue to a place on the national agenda and stirred the new president to action.
Can you help us free these Americans from the prison of poverty? And if you can, let me hear your voices.
As a young man, Johnson had taught Mexican-American children in rural Texas. Later, as a congressman, he idolized Franklin Roosevelt and dreamed of completing the New Deal. He named his vision for a better America, the Great Society. It included civil rights, voting rights, support for the arts, medical care to the elderly, and help for the poor. Lyndon Johnson was a master at moving legislation through Congress, but he had no blueprint for ending poverty. For that, he looked to Shriver.
If a general was asked, I want you to launch war on Grenada, could you invade it and take it over? Well, that's something you can get your mind around. But a war on poverty, that's like saying, could you, in Franklin purpose, could you wage war on gravity? He thought, oh my God, how am I going to do this?
He began by ordering research. And then he went looking for what the author Michael Harrington called the other America, the invisible poor. In Appalachia, Shriver saw schools that were shacks and heard stories of children eating dirt from the inside of stovepipes. In the Deep South, he witnessed the rule of Jim Crow, whereby black children were kept out of school to pick cotton, while their parents faced violence if they attempted to vote. In the North, most blacks were confined to ghettos, cut off from good schools, housing, and jobs. When Shriver saw the research he ordered, he was stunned. Of all the nation's poor people, half were children.
He became very, very committed to the point where this was no longer just a political assignment or something he needed to do because the president asked him, but this was something that had to be done and done right, and he became very passionate about it.
People are interested in being treated as human beings. They're interested in having other people treat them, as the Declaration of Independence says, as equals. That's the first thing that's needed in the war against poverty.
The civil rights movement had really elevated the notion of equality, and he wants to extend that spirit now to programs to end poverty nationwide.
You have to have that sense of human respect and dignity and equality before these other specific programs, like a health program or an educational program, can have its maximum effect.
Mr. Shriver, you say that you hope that something...
Shriver called up anyone who knew anything about poverty. Activists, scholars, the priests and nuns who worked among the poor, and the reporters who wrote about them. In 16 weeks, they had a plan.
It's not a program of federal handouts to alleviate poverty temporarily. It is aid to help those who are willing to help themselves get out of poverty by building up their skills, increasing their employability.
Shriver hated the idea of handouts, which he equated with what he called cheap grace, a kind of a charity which does not empower people.
The plan created OEO, the Office of Economic Opportunity. As in the Peace Corps, he wanted the poor to lift themselves out of poverty, and he wanted privileged Americans to work among them. OEO launched VISTA, Head Start, Youth Corps, Job Corps, Upward Bound, Foster Grandparents, Work Study, and a way to give poor communities resources for their own anti-poverty programs called Community Action.
Community action, as its name implies, is local action. We depend completely on local communities to come to Washington with their own programs of combating poverty in the ways that they see fit to do it in their own hometown.
Everybody's talking about our country's problems. Why not do something about them? The name of the game is VISTA. Volunteers in service.
Shriver returned to the college campuses and urged students and teachers to practice what he called the politics of service.
Not by more courses and responsibility, not by lectures, not by commencement speeches, but by political action in this true sense of politics, in the service of your city.
It mobilizes a tremendous cohort, particularly of young Americans, who are now being challenged in a way in which they felt they had not been challenged before.
It was a time in history when it was clear that it's the right thing to do and you could do it. Just do it. Everybody get involved and do what you can do.
Within a year, OEO announced that the war on poverty had reached 3 million people. Newsweek wrote, "The poor were no longer invisible."
As of today, 1,000 American communities have organized themselves into community action groups.
The newly formed groups met in churches and community centers, making plans to improve life in their city neighborhoods and small towns.
The water should be on.
It was the first time poor communities had authority and federal money to tackle problems where they lived.
I think that this is a problem that this group should be actively involved in.
They use the influx of federal money to tackle problems like transportation, like child development, like education, like health care, like slum conditions.
Shriver reasoned that for the poor to have some control over decisions affecting their lives, OEO needed to fund community action groups independent of City Hall, even though he knew that would anger local politicians. And it did.
And they said, what the hell is Shriver doing? Big city mayors were outraged by community action, and they argued, we're the duly elected representatives of the people.
In Newark, Los Angeles, Cleveland, Chicago, action groups carried out rent strikes against slum landlords and protested government policies that maintained segregation. They charged mayors with neglecting their schools and city services and accused them of favoring more affluent communities. Inside the war on poverty, battles erupted in communities across the country in a struggle for power.
From the perspective of the activists themselves, it's a stepping stone for them to get their issues heard and to finally get the city to pay attention and do something about their problems. And sometimes that means they're on a collision course with big city mayors. And so for the mayors, it looks like the federal money is helping these rabble-rousers make trouble.
All they had to do was pick up a telephone, dial a number, and say, we are still working on it.
Shriver met with the nation's mayors to try to ease tensions. We're not trying to exclude mayors, he said, but we want to bring everyone in.
Let's all of us have enough of the spirit of our country and enough compassion to unbar the door to all who are poor.
But few mayors were moved.
And by joining
In his defense, Shriver told Congress that the war on poverty was not just to help poor people change, but that hostile or uncaring institutions also had to change, especially government. A year into the war on poverty, Shriver found another way to make that happen.
When he found himself politically blocked, what more natural thing would there be but to turn to the law and to see if the law could be made an ally to the poor?
The poor need and deserve the same quality of legal services that the profession owes to all citizens.
He makes an incredible speech, and he pulls the ABA into the community action program through legal services to the poor.
In January of 1966, Shriver opened neighborhood law offices across the country.
We will be representing the poor people. We will continue to accept cases. And
along comes this little pipsqueak lawyer program that says if you keep doing things the way you have been doing, like discriminating against folks who are black or folks who are Hispanic or kids who have arrest records as juveniles, we're just going to have to sue you.
They sued school boards and city governments for discrimination and employers for unfair labor practices.
He had Ronald Reagan, amongst other folks, call him up and say, hey, what are your lawyers out in California doing this? They're suing the Department of Labor. That's me. You're giving them money to sue me. What's going on here?
They were talking about inequality. And all of a sudden, these state commissioners get dragged into a courtroom, the superintendent of schools, the mayor.
Leaders of both parties complained that legal services and community action were a bunch of Boston Tea Parties. And they were dumbfounded. Shriver dared to give federal money to the poor to sue local governments.
He bought into a mess of trouble and stood by it. He was putting his personal capital on the line for this. all the credibility that he had bought with the Peace Corps, all of the credibility of a Kennedy family connection, and his own reputation as somebody from the private sector who'd been successful.
We expect action at the community level. And when you've got action, you've got arguments, you've got dissent, you've got differences of opinion. That's what we're financing. For the first time in the history of this country, poor people actually have a place and a way in which to express themselves. That's community action. Anybody who thinks that isn't action misplaces or misinterprets the situation. They think community action must mean community apathy or community torpor or community death. We're creating life at the community level. And when you got life, you got movement, you got dissension, you got action. That's what we want.
Congressman Powell says
Shriver pushed and pleaded with local officials to move over and share power with those who are to be helped. But it can't be token involvement, he said. It must be real.
That question of whether or not the solution to the problems of the country and society involve a partnership of all people or simply involve the workings of those people who are already established leaders. That's the central controversy. And I think that how so many people come on the other side of the issue than Shriver does tells us that for many people the question was not solving poverty, but maintaining power.
By the summer of 1966, America had become deeply polarized. Riots erupted in the black ghettos of the nation's cities, sending shockwaves across the country. Government reports attributed the riots to a lack of jobs, poor schools, and feelings of isolation from the larger society. Twice, Shriver pressed Johnson for a six-fold increase in his anti-poverty budget. He said, if you want to wage a war on poverty, this is how you do it. Johnson rebuffed both appeals. He needed the money for another war in Vietnam. Growing divisions between black and white, young and old, hawks and doves, threatened the Great Society and strained Shriver's relationship with the president. Privately, Johnson complained that Shriver had started a damn revolution. The war on poverty was embattled on all fronts, and a struggle for power in the Deep South was about to imperil the entire effort.
Was that video not phenomenal?
It's a powerful video, and I think the great thing about the video is that most people, even many people across the nation who work in community action, don't realize the history of community action. It was a pretty controversial movement, and it was controversial for the reasons you saw on the film clipping, which was that, you know, these are federal dollars being placed into a community and not given to governments, not given to the folks who traditionally would administer these funds, but given to community to say, what do you need to do in order to make change in your community for individuals who are in poverty? And I think that seeing that video gives people an understanding of our role as it relates to advocacy, our role as it relates to encouraging individuals with low incomes to have a voice in what is going on in their lives, to be able to be a partner. As you know, and I'm not sure that members of the public realize, the Community Action Board has representatives on its board who are in poverty or who have experienced or utilized the services within the organization, who have a voice in being able to say what happens with the funds that come into our city. The design of community action still today is that you rely not just on what government officials or individuals who work within organizations feel, but that you get feedback from your customers, you get feedback from the people whose lives you're attempting to impact, so that they help guide some of the work that you're doing. So some of our recent changes within the organization to start MAC for Jobs, which we just finished a 3-year pilot with MAC for Jobs, was to really focus on talking with our parents and the people that we serve around, what are your needs? And a lot of their needs related to not just employment, because many of our parents are employed, but also being able to increase their skills so that when they're employed, they no longer need the services of organizations like ours. And so I think that what the video does and what understanding the work of Metropolitan Action Commission does is it sort of expands people's thinking and understanding that being able to really help people address, well, I'll give you this example. For some of our customers, they will leave us and they will no longer be in poverty. For others of our customers, they will leave us, and some of the barriers that were there that kept them from being employed, that kept them from being able to move into a better job, will be removed. For some of our customers, they will come to us because they're in a one-time emergency crisis and we're able to help them out of that crisis. Others of our customers will, because we serve senior citizens, we serve individuals who are on fixed incomes, they might come back annually for a little help because their incomes don't change if they're senior citizens or if they're an individual with a disability. So there are lots of things that we are able to do to help individuals in our community. But I think the work that we're doing really connected to some of our partners around employment and workforce. As you know, some of the initiatives that we're starting with Nashville State to provide certifications for some of our parents who are interested in the IT field, where they can start at the first level, which is help desk through IT. We'll be starting that certification in January or February of 2016. The numbers of families or parents or women or men who are interested in working in child care environments, we will be offering to our parents and our adult education students the Child Development Associate, so they have an opportunity to get that additional skill so that they can see some improvement in their income as well. And so I think all of those things bring back to the community, the work of community action. We are talking again with some of our partners about another poverty symposium so that we can look together as we did, I think about 5 years ago. We were privileged to co-host the city's poverty symposium with almost 500 individuals participating. So we are beginning the process of discussion with our partners around how we take care of that issue again, or look at it again to see how are we doing, what came out of that symposium, just to do a check-in. So we're excited about what's going on, and we're excited about MACTV because we see that as really our avenue for being able to inform the public about, again, not just the work of the Metropolitan Action Commission, but the incredible work and challenges that both our organization and many of our partners are experiencing as we work together to do this work with community around addressing the issues of poverty. Well, Lisa, thank you. It was good to have this time with you, and I just want to say that we're excited about MACTV. We're excited about what it does for the community. I've mentioned that I've had an opportunity to attend some of the affordable housing forums that are going on in our city. And what we're learning is that people have a real heart and interest in making a difference. They don't know necessarily where they can start. And in many cases, they don't understand some of the government programs and other things that are out there. Our hope is that through MACTV, that we'll be able to be a voice both with our customers directly, but also with the community, and saying, this is the work that's being done in the city, and these are the challenges that we're facing. So I'm glad for this opportunity.